Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Talent Gap Fireside Chat, where we talk about causes of and solutions to the talent gap. I'm your host, Pete Strauss, and joining me today is Lori Kevin. She's a Vice President, Security and Compliance at IMO Health. Welcome, Lori.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Could you give our audience a little background on yourself and your career thus far?
Sure. I've been in the industry for about 25 years. I historically had been part of operations within customer care for an e-commerce site and organization. Managed a lot of things from managing the systems team, customer care, help desk, as well as kind of then migration to cloud and then real focus on security. So for the last 5 years, I have been building the security program at IMO Health to make sure that for our products, which is point of care terminology mapping for healthcare providers, that we're doing the right things to make sure we're keeping our customers' data safe, which is patient healthcare information, and making sure that we have a real good, strong culture of security within the organization to make sure everybody is managing in this very, kind of risk heavy world.
Nice. So what teams report to you then in that role? Is it security operations, compliance, GRC?
Yes, all of the above. We're a very, very lean team. Right now, we're 5 people strong. So we've got application security engineering. That's really one kind of offshoot. And then GRC is managed by really myself and another manager. We've recently taken on compliance as part of that responsibility.
Very cool. So sounds like you've held a variety of roles and you've seen a variety of departments within security. So as the name of the show might imply, we talk a lot about the talent gap. Do you believe that the talent gap is a real thing in security? And if so, what would you say it looks like?
Yeah, I certainly think that there is. I'm very, very fortunate. I work with incredibly talented, really innovative and heavily focused folks who love what they do and are engaged and passionate about it. And for that too, we have a really strong support within our own development and cloud foundation type teams that, we're able to kind of understand what it is that we need to be doing, especially with new threats emerging and, where we need to be at, how we can evolve the security program. That said, we have been trying to hire for a couple of positions now, and the requirements always seem to change, right? We need just more horsepower. We need to have a, DevSecOps model where we can have, folks embedded within product development, but that costs some money, right? People are always going to be the most expensive line item in that budget. So where that's not possible, we've had to figure out how to accommodate that with different tech stack, automation, et cetera. But right now, we're really needing to try to find a unicorn, if you will, which is who can come in and help us really manage and lead our AI security program. We ourselves develop an LLM in-house. And so for us, making sure that we understand, when our software engineers want to go use these new models that are available one every second, roughly, right? We need to make sure that we have the appropriate vetting and risk assessment that we can do there. And right now, it's really, really tough to hire somebody who has that AI focus and experience because it's so new. But really, they need to first have that security background, right? We go back and forth where do we need somebody who's really strong in AI and we can teach them the security? Or do we really need that person who has that security outlook and that is their focus and then understand how that relates to AI? And I always tend to go for the latter, right? It's hard to teach somebody security if it's not something that they have had at least some experience in. So I think that that's really a challenge for us right now is to find the perfect fit, and in that space too, do you need it to be a more focused individual contributor who is an engineer who can really get into the weeds, or do we need to find somebody who has had that AI experience plus security to help kind of lead a program overall? So that's one. And another one we're hiring for is a lead compliance specialist now that we've adopted the compliance responsibility. And that one we felt this will be kind of a home run, right? We'll certainly find that individual before we'll find this AI person. And it's challenging. It's challenging to find like the right set of skills and experiences that are going to, come in and be able to contribute to the team.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and there's a reason I have a job, it's because these things aren't necessarily cut and dry, and the search for a given person tends to evolve over time, as you had mentioned. You may start with one set of requirements, and then through
Yep.
interviewing a couple of people realize, hey, they're actually maybe not what we need, despite the fact that they kind of fit there on paper. So how do you narrow down a set of requirements from like you said, looking for a unicorn? How do you decide, like, what do we absolutely need to have on day one, and what can we fill in over time?
Sure. So, I will give kudos to our recruiting team here at IMO Health. They are tremendous at what they do. So there's always that initial review with them to make sure that they understand exactly what it is that we're looking for. And frankly, I'm using AI to help me write out the job description exactly how, we want it. And then we have to tweak it though, right? It's really sitting down with our recruiting team and understanding and helping them to understand really, and iterating on that. I mean, we've done that now for, gosh, probably a few iterations where we've had to tweak it. We need to tweak even the job title, right, to attract the right talent. Certainly making sure that we're understanding what that means in the job description that's going to highlight something and really engage the right people. At first we're trying to figure out we need more of a leader for a position who'll be able to talk to speak to this at like an executive level or a board level, right? And as we're seeing kind of the needs and the daily functions within our software engineering and our development of our products, now we're kind of backtracking and saying, no, we actually need somebody more technical. So I think it's good to have just that basic set of framework. Like I said, we need somebody first to have that security focus as opposed to the softer skills or the technology focus within AI or whatever tech stack we might need them for, and really just make sure that we've got the right experience. A lot of times I'll say too that we'll have that job description and find the right people. I don't know, by the time it gets to me from an interview perspective, I really focus on it more on how is this person going to fit within the team. On paper, they can have a ton of skill sets. They can have all the right certifications. They can have the right experience. And it's getting them in the door. And then really for me, it's understanding how are you going to vibe with the team? Are you going to come in and be collaborative? Are you going to help us innovate? Are you going to, be eager to try out new things and not be afraid to make mistakes? So I think it's making sure at the outset that it is going to evolve. And I think that that's okay, knowing that as you're seeing new candidates, the thing you're looking for in the job description may even need to be tweaked a little bit. But at the end of the day, it's really that foundation of security focus, being able to demonstrate that you've had that, being able to build programs and processes and that you're technical enough to do it is really, I think, the standard that's going to be there no matter what the job description or really what that specific role is that we're trying to fill.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I think a lot of people view job descriptions as just a list of requirements. This is what somebody must have to be a technical fit, or in some cases they'll have quote unquote soft skills on there.
Yep.
But people rarely think about job descriptions as a way to advertise your company. The culture of the company, the culture of the team. What are the intangibles that we're looking for in this person? Often I hear from hiring managers, we want passion, we want curiosity, we want, communication ability, a lot of these things that don't necessarily show up on a resume. Yet when you look at the resume, it's usually just a laundry list of technical skills.
Right.
And to your point earlier, you want to attract the best people. So you want to view a job description not just as a list of must-haves for us, but also what's great about our company that would attract the right person, not just the person with the right technical skills. So I think there's many missed opportunities out there when companies look at job descriptions. And I've seen job descriptions ruin quote unquote deals on the recruiting front. Because people will get bogged down on one line in the job description. I noticed this role interacts with executives and I never have before. So that's of concern to me. That's why I think it's so important to get those things right. And then to also, when you're actually recruiting and talking to these folks, suss out their motivators too, as it matches up to your job and your team. And that's what I often spend the majority of my time doing, is screening people based not on their hard skills, but on their motivators. And it seems like you spend a lot of time on that too, or at least assessing culture fit. So what what would be some of the motivators that you would like, I guess, would be green flags for you in looking for somebody that's a fit for your team?
Sure. I think it's always going to be somebody who has an idea of wanting to, the questions that I'm going to look for is what are the training opportunities that your company provides? Where do you see from a development plan perspective as far as like career growth? Listen, not everybody, right, wants to get to a level where they need to be a director and manage people. So if they want to, great, we'll figure out how to make that happen. But again, we're a lean team, so it's not going to happen for a while. But the cultural fit for me is really, can you escalate and feel comfortable doing so? And can you work alongside other folks who may be smarter about a topic than you in a room, right? What are the things that tell me about your problem solving and how you go about it, right? That's pretty typical and kind of lame. But at the same time, I do need to understand kind of that critical thinking, and they need to be able to communicate. I think in security, what is really, really tough is we can't continue, and this is old school, right, to think about security just in this box and we're isolated and we're the office of no, right? I want to know that somebody is willing to kind of get out there and have conversations with folks but in a way, right, that is going to be inclusive and educational for those people. So for me, the motivators that I'm looking for are really just being part of a growing and evolving program, right? I want to know that they're happy, they're excited about contributing to that in whatever capacity that means. Anytime they're going to think about, you don't want to do the 5 years from now kind of thing, but understanding the company and the business and how we continue to support that, those are the types of questions that I want to hear when I'm interviewing somebody. What is this position going to do to help grow the business? What is it going to do to help further opportunities? So I think when folks come in and have a mindset like that, those types of questions or responses to the questions that I have really resonate with me, because that to me indicates that there's an individual who wants to tie what they're doing to what the business is trying to do. And I think that's really, really important. I think a term that I've heard at conferences and webinars recently has been business enablers. And so anytime that there's an indication that the person coming in gets that, and it's not just heads down, let me go track some vulnerabilities and try to, get them resolved, or, just sit down and heads down, do it and go about my day. That to me is the opposite of what I'm looking for. I want it to be we've got, like I said, a small team, but that means a very tight team that hold each other accountable, that challenge each other, certainly. And, as a group, though, we're really trying to make sure we're focusing on the right things for the business.
Yeah, that's a great point about being business enablers. And I think that's one issue that I see often in this, I don't know what you want to call it, economic environment or what, but I'm hearing increasingly that security departments are running leaner and leaner and relying on tooling versus additional headcount, and trying to be as cost effective as possible. So this whole, security as a cost center dilemma, it becomes, I guess it's further highlighted when you don't have folks that are thinking about enabling other aspects of the business versus being almost like a tax on other departments,
That's right.
How do you screen for that sort of thing for people that are more business enablers and more comfortable interacting with other departments? That seems like something pretty intangible to me.
It certainly is. And I think that the way I'll answer that is I've been doing this now for many, many years. And I think that I have learned to really weed through kind of the BS, if you will, and get to, I have a good read on folks to understand, how they're going to fit. And so, yeah, it is an intangible, but I think that there are kind of qualifiers that, never really am looking at if there's no questions about the business at all coming from the person, from the candidate, that tells me there's not a lot of interest there, right? That's just kind of basic interview questions and skill sets, that to be able to communicate even within the conversation. So it's as silly as eye contact and keeping the conversation going. I don't like to do kind of the list of questions. I get kind of a read, and it's more conversational, right? Like you and I are having right now. And I think it's one of those things that if there's not a if I walk away feeling like we didn't just have a conversation, that to me is kind of a sign that it might not be a great fit. Now, again, that's depending on the role, right? But being from a lean team, we are going to need to have let's break down those barriers, right? And make sure that we are all communicating effectively. So I think when it comes to really making sure that we're getting somebody in the door that is going to be thinking about the business, it's those types of questions that I want to be hearing. I want to understand how they supported the business in their past experiences, right? What were some of the kind of core objectives, if you will, or competencies that was really important in your previous role? What did you do then to help support that? We don't need to go through OKRs necessarily and get into this, solid framework of goal setting and things like that. But if they can articulate that and speak to that, that to me, is a signal that, they're going to be focused on not just getting the work done, but understanding how that contributes to the success of the business.
Yeah, for sure. It seems like there's a couple of factors or traits coming into play there. You have sort of analytical ability to analyze what the business needs, and then you have the genuine curiosity to actually care about it. And questions are downstream from curiosity. So, and that's one of the traits that often I'll hear from hiring managers. They want people that are genuinely curious. And, looking back over my years and years experience in recruiting, if there's any through line, like any one thing that has gotten more candidates rejected than pretty much anything else I could think of, it's not having questions for the interviewer. It's even come up recently. And when I do my prep calls with folks, I'll let them know, make sure you have your questions written down ahead of time. And in some cases, they honestly don't care, or the questions that they did have were answered. But in which case, I would say if someone's genuinely curious, if all their questions were answered, they're probably going to have more that came up during the conversation.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And at that point, there's no excuse, man. Go in and ask AI, right? Here's the company. Here's the role. What are some key questions I can ask? There's really no excuse, right? To make sure that you have that kind of preparation. And frankly, as you're doing your prep, that, when you get that response and really in a way that you can ask it intelligently so quickly now at your fingertips, you'll find other things that you're probably going to, I didn't think about it that way. I didn't really even consider, that type of query. So yeah, there's no excuse for that for sure.
So obviously we talked a little bit about what the candidates can be doing correctly to, better impress interviewers, have plenty of questions, be genuinely curious, be prepared. What about on the hiring side? What do you think hiring teams and recruiting teams are getting wrong these days? And, how do you think we might be able to improve on those things?
I think it's got to be making sure that they're doing that, taking that first step to say, okay, I have this job description. You don't just throw it over the fence and say, okay, it's posted. Now we're going to go figure it out. It is, and I'll kudos to our team because they really make sure that they have a key understanding of exactly what the role is, what we're looking for, the skill sets, the keywords, and they'll send just profiles, right? They'll say, hey, here's a profile. It's not an active, it wasn't an actual person that applied, but here's a LinkedIn profile I saw. Is this what you need? And then we'll kind of go back and forth. And we've recently done this on giving me a list of some profiles to use to say, this is a little bit more on the GRC side, or I need something more technical. I need to take the initiative then to go find the profiles that are good fits from my side, because that just helps educate them. Right. So we've actually gone through that iteration a few times, and the light bulbs finally went off. That's like, got it. This makes sense to me. Let me revamp the job description, the job title, maybe even. I'm going to send it back to you. So it's got to be collaborative, right? They're recruiting, if they're really good in their space, they know kind of what they're looking for. But we've got, a very lean recruiting team here, right? And they've got to try to find talent across the entire organization, not just for security. So the things that we're looking for are going to be vastly different than what we're looking for even from a marketing team or a field salesperson, right? So if it's not collaborative and, me as a manager, but working with recruiting, it's on me, right? It is on me to make sure that there is a very, very clear, intentional description of these are the things that we're looking for. And that constant feedback loop is what's really important. And frankly, again, for this particular role that we're trying to fill, we knew it was going to take a long time, but the constant communication and updates and review of things is what at least is making sure we're on the same page. And as I said earlier, the requirements are sort of evolving the longer it takes. So now we need to maybe get creative about, the position itself. We need to be thinking about how we are going to market. One of the things that I think is great that our team does is not only did we have the post, you throw it out there, we've got it on our website, it's on LinkedIn, we're promoting it. I did a quick 60-second video blurb about it and posted on my LinkedIn. Hey, here's why we're excited about this role. This is what we're looking for. Come join a really talented team that's on cutting edge technology right now, and, blah, blah, blah. You spruce it up, right? But as you said earlier, it's not just that we have to make sure that we've got exactly the right wording to throw it out there. It's making sure that we're selling the organization as well as a place that this is an opportunity for you and you're not going to want to pass this up.
Yeah, it's awesome you think about that and how you're marketing the position in the company. I think so many companies, what they do wrong is they see like hundreds or thousands of applicants, and the thought then becomes, okay, well, if there's that many people applying and there's that many candidates on the market, we can be as picky as we want and we don't need to do any selling whatsoever. It's like, yeah, but if you have any specific requirements or you're looking for certain soft skills, rock stars still need to be sold a little bit,
Sure.
as cliche as the term rock star might be. But yeah, it's great to hear that you're doing those short videos. And I've actually thought about that about this podcast. Like, it's a good way to get a long form sense of a hiring manager's style and how they view their people and that sort of thing,
right.
to use it as a marketing tool. Because so much about recruiting is selling. And if the hiring manager realizes that, that's even better, because they know that selling needs to happen from the very beginning all the way through the process to the offer letter. If it starts at the offer letter, it's too late. At that point, you've already made your impression, and they're going to have a decision already in the back of their mind what it's going to be. So it's great to hear that you're doing that. And curiosity too. It seems like you have the curiosity on the recruiting team side, and then you have the curiosity on your side. Like, hey, what are you guys seeing out there? And in their case, they're curious about what you're thinking about these profiles. And yeah, some of the most engaged hiring managers I've worked with has been the exact same way, where I'll just throw them a quick LinkedIn profile so they could check it out. Yes or no, and here's why. And that helps you adjust in real time what you're looking for, so you don't waste a ton of time, weeks even, of searching time, when you could just be spinning your wheels. So I totally agree that recruiting is very much an it's an iterative process. If you're just doing bookends basically at the beginning and the end of the process, you've lost a lot of collaboration in the middle, where you could be making micro adjustments and saving everybody a ton of time. So
no doubt.
Yeah, it's good to hear that you're doing that. So what about, I guess, at the end of the process then, once you've kind of iterated on what you're looking for, and people have started to get into the process, how do you keep them interested, and how do you move them quickly enough through the process where they don't lose interest? Do you have any thoughts about timing or number of interview rounds, that sort of thing?
I like to keep it simple. I'm not, again, this isn't, I'm not hiring for, a C level. It's a small team. So for me, it's pretty basic, right? You're going to have a phone screen by the recruiter. My manager who's going to do the hiring, I want him to go and have that first phone screen as well, to get a good feel that it's a good fit. And then I like the on-site interview. I like seeing a number of people. I'm not a huge fan of a panel. I like the one-on-one. And so for that would be other members of the team. Certainly, if you think about who we're going to be working with, okay, let's get them in front of legal. Let's get them in front of our cloud and foundation team let's get them in front of the developers, right? That they're going to be working with, to make sure that the developers feel like they're going to be competent and they'll be able to do the job and they can work with them collaboratively, right? For me, I always like to be kind of the last, just a quick, hey, how you doing? Great to meet you. I, can be the face of the team. That this is, and that's really, for me, it's always going to be that cultural part, right? It's going to be the fit with the team. Obviously, if we've got the screening going before, and I've got really smart folks that are talking to this person, and they, give a green pass to the candidate from a technical perspective, then I'm not going to worry too much about that. I want to know, are you going to be, accountable? Are you going to be responsive? Are you going to be able to communicate? And, that happens in a day. I don't need to have this go on forever. I don't need the psychological kind of questions and things like that. Because at the end of the day, it's a human thing, right? It's got to have that human touch. And so I think that having that on site then with a number of different people, not just directly on the team, is really helpful, because I think that, I've been in positions before where we've done that. It's basically the same process. And man, you'll get a thumbs up from 3 out of the 5 people, and 2 would be an absolutely no. And you need to take those things into consideration, because, they may not be working directly with me the whole time, or even their hiring manager, depending on the nature of the role. So you got to make sure that you have a broader audience that can weigh in on it, for those folks that they're going to be interacting with on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's great. Well, and you mentioned panel interviews. It's interesting. I've certainly seen the positive and the negative effects of panel interviews. I would say they tend to be more negative than positive, probably, only because I think a lot of people, you're not necessarily getting the best out of them when they're trying to interact with 5 different people at once, where the questions are coming from every angle. Like you said, I think you tend to get the best out of most people one-on-one, unless you have somebody that's just extremely gregarious and extroverted, in which case they may be able to do well in that sort of group setting. But when it's an interview, it's not like you're at a social function together, so there's an added element of pressure there, where I think you don't necessarily get the best out of people. What happens, though, when you have so many different interview rounds and they have to meet so many different people? How do you ensure that everybody's on the same page as far as, the requirements for the role? Because I've seen this happen before, where there'll be a fundamental misunderstanding between 2 different interviewers about what they're looking for, and somebody will get rejected for it, just because they weren't aligned. How do you ensure that everybody's on the same page, I guess?
Same thing that we do with recruiting, right? There's got to be prep. Again, it's not just chucking it over the fence. And I have been part of this in the past, where there have been so many candidates that we've gotten in, and we have, the panel who's going to be talking to that individual, and it's so fast and so furious that it does get a little missed as far as the purpose of the role, and frankly, the role of the interviewer, right? So it's got to be that, the way that we would kind of divide it up is what's really important is to make sure too, if there is one role, it's got to be the same team throughout the roles kind of process, right? So they need to see the same candidates kind of compared to each other, right, for that same role. Because if you're throwing in like, oh, we need a developer, we need a person from legal, it doesn't work, because you got to make sure you're having the right folks. One, they got to be willing to do it too. I think it's great to say like, oh, we'll just go pull this person from development because we work with them all the time. This might not be their jam, right? So you got to make sure too that the people that are going to be talking to the candidate want to be there, are curious about them, know that this is an important role. So it's defining exactly what it is that you want as the hiring manager with each of those folks, and then get a feel for what they want to be focused on, right? From a development perspective, it might be more technical. From a legal perspective, you may want to know a little bit more about their experience in compliance. Certainly from the team's perspective, they may want to know a little bit about where they've been, right? What's their experience been? Have they worked on big teams or small teams? And I think making sure that those assignments are very, very clear to the panel prior to the candidate coming on site, that you have a consistent then measurement of how you're looking across all of them to figure out which is going to be the best fit for the position.
Yeah, I was just thinking consistency seems to be the common theme there. Well, and like you said, assigning roles to each individual interviewer, basically you don't want redundancy either.
That's right.
Where multiple people on multiple teams are asking the same question, and just possibly even small variations on the same answer could be interpreted completely differently.
Yep.
And then obviously you have to track feedback as well. Like, do you do some sort of ranking system based on certain categories, based on core values or something? Because I've generally, I guess, found that to be pretty effective.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you've got the whole, recruiting systems that you can use now that help with all of that ranking, right? And so we kind of put in as many, the quantifiable, if you will, measures that are assigned to some sort of ranking on each of the different areas, right? Will this person work well with the team? Do they rank their technical capabilities from, 1 to 5, whatever that means. Certainly communication skills, were they able to answer kind of these, tougher questions? And, again, from each person's perspective, there might be a little bit different, but if you have somebody focused on the technical versus the cultural, like me, it's those types of rankings that you can do on specific things around their technical capabilities, their experience, their communication skills. And then the big one at the end of the day is absolutely would hire, no concerns, all the way down to not going to be a good fit. And so it's the culmination of the smaller evaluations with just the big one that's like, hey, are you thumbs up or thumbs down? That helps kind of spit out that, okay, their ranking is this. And so when you get that listing, you'll have that sort of ranking across all the candidates. Then you still need to have that human interaction though, right? Like that's great. They are assigned a number, whoop-de-doo. But if we really think that, candidate, on the second on the list versus number one, there's just a feel, right, that somebody may have that's just a little bit something that I hesitate on. And you still have to have those really frank discussions collectively, not just spitting it back into an online tool, right, some portal, and not having a live discussion. You got to make sure you're having the collaborative conversation to make sure that everybody gets aligned.
Yeah, I was just thinking in a perfect world, or maybe slightly imperfect world, you would have some sort of sophisticated algorithm where at the end of the day, the system spits out an exact, ranking number or whatever out of 5 or 10. And based on that, you would make the selection strictly based on numbers. But like you said, it's a human decision. So how do you, like I've always saw, I guess, recruiting is part art, part science. And I think you need to have both to make effective hires. How do you ensure that the art part of that, the human judgment calls, doesn't in any way encroach on bias? That's one thing that has kind of kept me up at night is like, okay, so you're making this decision. Somebody's not the right fit by the numbers. How do you know that you're not being biased in what you're in that decision, I guess, that you're making there?
Yeah, that's a tough one, right? Because you certainly have, it's important to have a variety of folks who are going to be talking to the candidate, which is great, but certainly everybody, I have biases, right? Whether you acknowledge or know about them or not, right? So I think it's making sure that you do have the combination of okay, here is a binary that we can go against whether they do have this certification or they don't, right? That's the easier part. I think, part of the conversation is to make sure too that you're managing that's why I think having HR in there to be listening to the responses on, okay, this was my experience. This is what I heard from this candidate, right? And I think just having the group conversation about the candidate is really important because you can kind of it's again holding each other accountable as to, where you got that, your feedback on the candidate about a particular response to a question. You may have asked the same question and gotten the same answer as another person in the group. And it's a completely different experience, right? I think one of my favorite things that I used to do, and this was long ago, we were really kind of fast and furious hiring, was the favorite part of ours for post-interview was we'd get in the room and we'd say, okay, let's go do this. And we'd say 1, 2, 3. And it's either up, down, and then whoever went sideways, boy, we gave them hell because it was one of those things like, no, we got to make a decision. But having that familiarity, I think, with the panel and having that consistency, I think does help to make sure we are keeping each other honest, that we're not leaning one way or another, that we understand too any initiatives that we may have from a hiring perspective. That's got to be important. It's got to be respected. I think DEI now is not something that's really discussed, but I think inherently you want to make sure that you're looking at your workforce and doing things and hiring based on your core objectives, and making sure that group then understands that, and having that familiarity, I think, goes a long way. Because I think once you're comfortable with each other as part of the overall group of evaluators, you're going to be more comfortable in speaking your truth and making sure that you're doing that in a respectful way.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and making sure that people feel, I guess, empowered or comfortable enough sharing actual feedback versus what they view as what the group wants to hear. I think
Absolutely.
often it's tough to get people, especially if there's a culture of collaboration. Nobody wants to be the black sheep, and have the feedback that nobody else had. So how do you make that person that may have some contrary feedback, how do you make them feel comfortable enough to actually speak up if something isn't as it seems?
Yeah, I love that. I think that's exactly right. It's got to come from a leadership perspective, right? I mean, I have a weekly meeting with my team, and I'll, bring up some topics and I'll challenge and they'll challenge. And I want that to be a safe space, right? We do, within our organization, we kind of do the net promoter score, right? And we talk about that when those results come out. I want to talk to the team and I want to make sure that they're aware of what is kind of the experience across the organization and weed out any challenges, issues that they may have. In doing that, I think that's where we really foster that sort of openness and safe space that people should be heard, right? If they're part of the team that's going to be interviewing the candidate, there's no heavy weight, right, across the well, probably from the hiring manager, I suppose. Ultimately, right at the end of the day, it's going to be their decision. But I think it is having that initial kickoff of what the role is that we're hiring for and making sure that we are expressing that everybody's input is absolutely necessary for us to make the best decision, and continuing to have that iterative conversation around it as you're getting closer to making a decision. It's absolute, right? This is a human at the end of the day. This is a human interaction. It is a collaboration. And you've gotta feel and make sure that everybody's heard and take that into account, right? That even if it was, I think I talked with you in our previous conversation around, hiring for a position that I was part of that everybody else was a thumbs up and I was vehemently a thumbs down. And I was nervous to say it out loud. I was very constructive in the reasoning behind my disapproval. And that was great because I felt heard, right? And at the end of the day, based on other candidates that we had, we realized that was probably the right decision to pass. And so you just have to foster that space that people can feel comfortable, because it's important and we need everybody's input.
Yeah, well, people have to trust that there's not going to be retaliation for genuine feedback. And, as long as people are, like you said, being constructive and have thought it through and aren't just reacting to something, but are actually, they have evidence to support their position, essentially. Mm-hmm. And I would imagine too, that's kind of an ongoing thing too, as you're as a team leader doing your one-on-ones with people or having team meetings. Like, you're just building a culture of, I don't know if transparency is the right word, but where people feel like, hey, I can actually speak up if I need to. And often when you hear somebody leave an organization, it's because they feel like they weren't heard, or they couldn't safely speak up. They were always worried that if they did say anything about some sort of issue, that they were going to be let go. I've been there myself. So how do you? I guess that brings up another good point. Like, we talked a lot about the front end of the process. How do you ensure that people are sticking around for the long term in a pretty chaotic environment where it seems like there's less loyalty from the employee side and less loyalty from the employer side? How do you treat retention and keeping people?
So I'll go back to your original, one of the original thoughts about motivators, right? Everybody is motivated by something a little bit different, and it depends. It's going to vary. My motivators have changed since, I started way back when to right now. And so you have to figure that out for each of your team members. So some of it could be comp. Some of it could be a specific comp structure, right? Maybe not just salary, but what are we looking at as far as, bonus and/or equity? What does that look like? And what are the potentials for that? Some might be flexibility. I'm sure part of the challenge right now seems every company is doing something a little bit different, with like full in 5 days a week to something hybrid to, hey man, we still don't care. You can work remote and we're going to be just as successful. That is a huge sticking point, I know, to a lot of folks, that it depends on if they see that it is full-time on site, there's not even going to be an application there, right? So I think that flexibility is really, really important. I've got on my team, I've got folks with kids, without kids, live super close to the office, live super far away, right? Like no one's life is any more important than anybody else's. Everybody equally needs to be able to live the life that they need to live, right? Whether that's I got to go to a kid's soccer game, or I don't have any kids. But I have my dog, and then I really want to go take them to the park. That is equally important, right? And I think it's saying those things out loud to make sure that it is heard that you are valuable, your time is valuable, and we can have some mandates about what's required as far as coming in, but I want to make sure that what you tell me is important to you. I want you to know that I'm listening, and I need to take action where I can, right? Might be a little bit of a challenge when it comes to things like comp, but where I can, I will show you and demonstrate in my everyday actions that I get it, that's important to you, and I support it, and I will advocate for you, right? And if I'm not doing that, boy, I sure hope my team is saying something to me. And I believe that I've created that safe enough space that they would be able to do that through, the one-on-ones I have with my direct reports. I do skip levels with the rest of the team. And again, because we're lean, we can do this, but I'm not just meeting with my managers every week. We meet as a whole team, right? And I've had the best thing that I've ever, that happened when we first started doing that once we were our team of 5 strong. One of the newest members of the team was like, hey, we could do this. We could run this meeting more efficiently. I think we need to, we had a tendency to kind of start on a topic and move off. And the joke now is that, hey man, Sean, you got the time? Are we on track? But that's a great contribution, and it has changed the way we operate from our team. So again, it's allowing that sort of freedom in speaking up and saying, like, this needs to be better for me because we're here for a short time and let's do it this way. So I think that's the only way, is to make sure that the team knows you're listening. And the only way they know you're listening is demonstrated in your actions. And I think that's a real big, important thing that managers need to know. That's really understanding the motivators for your team and then supporting that.
Well, too, and I think a lot of people just like to be treated like adults in the workplace.
Right.
Yeah, I can tell you, especially for myself, I'm extremely self-motivated. I have this sometimes external, but mostly internal locus of control, and I'm very self-motivated and results-oriented. So if you want to crush my spirit, the fastest way to do that is not treat me like an adult and micromanage me. Yeah. So you gotta give people enough latitude to exceed expectations or not do well enough and meet your expectations. So we're actually coming up on time here, believe it or not. So wanted to make sure I can ask you the one last question.
Sure.
Is there anything we're not talking about in the industry that we should be, especially as it relates to hiring?
I think that we are just with this advent of AI, I'll go back to, and I've said it multiple times, like the human aspect of it, right? It is important to look at it from, I think that's, again, where having these types of conversation, showing video on your site to understand and doing it in a less salesy way, right? Like being able just to be authentic, I think is really important when we're trying to find the right people. I think having some outreach to go to organizations that, I think we talked about the definition and the job description that folks have that, people may shy away from it because they don't meet every single thing that's a bullet on the requirements, right? I think how can we figure out how to encourage people into this space and take that leap and take a chance to just apply, click the apply, even if you're not fully baked as far as, all of your experience, because I personally will choose a person that I think has the aptitude and the potential over someone who looks great on paper, but has no idea how to have a conversation. Right. So I think that the questions that I have as we're trying to find the talent is, man, we both know it's out there, right? Is it because we don't allow imperfection, and that is sort of that, that is what people think that this is what's required in the industry, right? How can we make it more flexible, more open, more, we're trying to figure this out just as much as you guys are, right? Things are changing so fast in this space. we need fresh eyes on it. We need a different perspective. And so how can we entice people to take that risk and apply? Because, that gives us a broader pool that we can look at. And maybe if it's not a good fit for us, man, they're in our system now and we can network and we can provide them opportunities with the rest of our peers. So I think that's the question I have, which is, how can we get people comfortable with taking more risks? And I think the way that we do that is through having conversations like these, having a network, right? I can't tell you, this year I committed to really leaning into this, these types of chats and conferences. And that has been such a tremendous lift for me personally and professionally, and I've really been able to connect people in a way this year that I haven't been able to in years past. And, here's a great example of me speaking with you. So I think the more that we can have those conversations and create the opportunities for the human interactions, the face-to-face, hopefully we can figure out ways to get more people comfortable and willing to take a risk, and hopefully it kickstarts their career.
For sure. Well, and it seems like so much of hiring today is risk aversion. We want to hire somebody who's done the exact same job before because they're less of a risk that way. But I think sometimes to make truly effective, high potential hires, you do have to have a little risk tolerance. And I guess to your point, it seems like we have a lot of very qualified people out there, and they're just not getting in front of the right jobs or the hiring manager. So if we have any talent gap, it's essentially just a giant matching problem. There are good people, there are good jobs and good companies. They're just not finding each other for whatever reason, which we didn't get into too deeply here, but maybe for another time. So appreciate your time, Lori. Thanks for being a guest. And if people,
thank you. It's great.
Absolutely. If people want to reach out to you or find you online, what's the best way to do so?
Yeah, you can look up my LinkedIn profile. It's Lori Kevin. I'm with IMO Health, and this is great having these conversations. So any additional networking I can do to make new friends in this space, I look forward to it.
Sounds good. Well, thanks for your time, Lori. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Talent Gap Fireside Chat. Don't forget to follow our page on LinkedIn and like and subscribe on Spotify and YouTube. Hit that notification bell to be notified when we drop a new episode. New episodes air every Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern.